Team Europe pulled off something truly historic at the 2025 Ryder Cup. This was their first win on American soil since 2012, a monumental achievement against all odds. But instead of celebrating this incredible sporting triumph, the world found itself fixated on a grainy 14-second video from the European locker room. In that clip, Rory McIlroy led his champagne-soaked teammates in a chant directed at one man. Are you watching, Donald Trump? This seemingly harmless moment of celebration exploded into a global news story, completely overshadowing Europe's hard-fought victory. How did a private locker room joke spiral into a political firestorm? The answer reveals a massive miscalculation by McIlroy, one that would hand his adversary an unexpected PR victory. Here's what most people missed in the initial media frenzy. The chant wasn't some spontaneous public attack on a former president. It was actually a private video response to a personal text message that Rory McIlroy received from Donald Trump himself. While the team was celebrating their win, McIlroy's phone buzzed with a message from Trump. McIlroy read it aloud to his teammates, and in that moment of high spirits, he suggested they record a video as a playful reply. The chant they used wasn't even their own invention. They had heard European supporters singing it around the 18th green. Captain Luke Donald later explained that the team's intent was to engage in a little bit of banter and send a friendly video back to the former president. They believed they were participating in a private joke between competitors, but this is where McIlroy made his critical error. In a moment of celebration, drunk on victory and champagne, he created a piece of content and sent it directly to a master of media manipulation. McIlroy and his team were operating under conventional norms of communication. They likely didn't anticipate that their private jest would be made public. Trump, however, recognized the video's potential immediately. Instead of keeping the exchange private, he made a calculated decision to send it out to the world via his Truth social platform. And his accompanying message was a masterstroke of public relations. Yes, I'm watching. Congratulations. With this single post, Trump transformed the entire narrative. What could have been a minor behind-the-scenes taunt became a global news event, framed entirely on his terms. His response was immediately characterized by media outlets as surprising, graceful, classy, and even savage in its disarming simplicity. He had taken a moment of potential mockery and converted it into a demonstration of magnanimity in defeat, a stark contrast to his public reputation. Trump understood that possessing exclusive content is a form of power, and releasing it on one's own terms is the ultimate strategic advantage. The European players, in their moment of triumph, inadvertently handed their adversary the very tool he would use to win the ensuing public relations battle. McIlroy won the golf match, but he was completely outplayed in the PR game. To understand why McIlroy's judgment failed him so spectacularly, we need to examine the crucible he had just endured. The 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black wasn't just a partisan event. By multiple accounts, it was a rancorous, brutal, and toxic environment that tested the limits of sportsmanship. The fan behavior went far beyond typical boisterousness. It crossed a line into personal, profane, and sustained abuse that was, at times, amplified by the event's own organizers. The most egregious example occurred on Saturday morning, when the officially hired Master of Ceremonies, comedian Heather McMahon, used a megaphone on the first tee to lead a section of the crowd in a chant of, "F you, Rory." This wasn't the action of a few rogue fans. It was an act sanctioned by an official representative of the tournament, setting a dismal and permissive tone for the rest of the weekend. It effectively signaled that such behavior was acceptable. And this wasn't just a few rogue fans acting out of line. This was something much worse. It raises a serious question. Has fan behavior in sports gone completely off the rails? The line between passionate support and toxic abuse seems to have disappeared entirely. Let us know in the comments if you think crowds are getting too toxic and what should be done about it. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories the mainstream media misses. We're covering the controversies they ignore. The abuse McIlroy and his teammates faced was deeply personal. Insults were frequently directed at players' families, most notably Rory McIlroy's wife, Erica Stoll. In a shocking breach of decorum and safety, a beer was thrown in her direction as she walked the course. McIlroy's teammate Shane Lowry later described the level of abuse directed at Stoll as astonishing. The heckling also included homophobic slurs and crude insults targeting McIlroy's Northern Irish nationality. But here's where the criticism of McIlroy's actions becomes relevant. While no one can defend the crowd's behavior, McIlroy's response showed a troubling lack of composure. The hostility directly interfered with the competition. Spectators repeatedly shouted during players' pre-shot routines and backswings. The disruption became so intense that McIlroy was forced to step away from his ball on multiple occasions. At one point on Saturday, he turned to the crowd and shouted, "Shut the f up!" Was this an understandable reaction to extreme provocation? Absolutely. But was it the right move for someone who wanted to claim the moral high ground? That's debatable. A true leader and sportsman should rise above the hostility, not engage with it. McIlroy allowed the mob to get under his skin. He showed that they had gotten to him. The situation became so untenable that American player Justin Thomas, McIlroy's opponent, felt felt compelled to intervene, asking his own fans to be quiet while the Europeans were hitting. Think about that. The opposing player had to step in because the crowd was so out of control and McIlroy was so visibly affected. The response from the PGA of America was widely condemned as inept and reactive. When first approached for comment about the MC-led chant, the organization was oddly silent. When they finally acted, their measures proved inadequate. They began posting spectator etiquette warnings on screens around the course, but these were met with boos from the crowd. The decision to bring in state police to restore order underscored the organizers' failure to maintain a safe environment through their own stewarding. The damage was compounded by initial comments from PGA of America President Don Rea Jr., who publicly minimized the abuse, comparing it to what might be heard at a youth soccer game, and inaccurately suggesting that similar behavior occurs at Ryder Cups in Europe. These remarks were seen as tone-deaf and offensive, forcing both Rea and PGA CEO Derek Sprague to issue belated apologies days after the event concluded. In this leadership vacuum, McIlroy had a golden opportunity. He could have been the adult in the room. He could have taken the high road, issued a measured statement about respecting the game, and allowed his performance on the course to speak for itself. Instead, his decision to record and send the chant, even privately, was reckless. This final act of banter was the opposite of leadership. It was pouring gasoline on a fire. It further politicized the event and damaged the Ryder Cup's brand. The tournament's identity has always rested on a delicate balance between fierce nationalistic rivalry and an underlying foundation of respect and etiquette. McIlroy's actions, combined with the toxic fan behavior, severely compromised that balance. There is now a real risk that the competition could devolve into an escalating cycle of hostility. Donald Trump's presence at Bethpage Black wasn't that of a passive spectator. His visit on Friday was a meticulously staged event that transformed the golf course into political theater. His arrival was greeted by a mixture of loud cheers and audible boos, accompanied by unprecedented security, including approximately 500 law enforcement officers, SWAT units, and snipers. The pageantry included a ceremonial flyover of military jets during the national anthem, further blurring the lines between a sporting event and a state occasion. The connection between Trump's presence and the subsequent escalation in hostile fan behavior is undeniable. The visible presence of MAGA hats throughout the galleries and the general politics of humiliation central to his political brand created a permissive environment for the crowd. The partisan swagger slid easily into license. Trump's appearance gave an implicit endorsement to a more aggressive and confrontational form of fandom. This is the context in which McIlroy made his fateful decision. He was exhausted, emotionally drained, and rightfully frustrated by the abuse he and his team had endured. But that doesn't excuse the naivety of his actions. He created a piece of ammunition and handed it directly to someone who knows exactly how to weaponize such moments. Trump's four-word response wasn't just classy, it was a strategic masterpiece. It neutralized McIlroy's taunt, generated a viral moment that made Trump look magnanimous, and cemented the narrative on his terms. The exchange was perfectly calibrated for viral dynamics, combining a high-profile athlete, a polarizing political figure, and raw emotion. The story was no longer just about who won the Ryder Cup, but about the complex interplay of power, personality, and public perception. McIlroy, for all his talent on the course, was utterly unprepared for this kind of strategic media warfare and was made to look foolish. But here's the crucial point that cannot be lost in all this criticism. McIlroy's personal PR loss cannot erase the team's collective victory. Despite his questionable judgment in the aftermath, Team Europe achieved something truly remarkable. They won under the most intense and toxic pressure imaginable. This victory was not just an athletic accomplishment, it was an act of defiance against an overwhelmingly hostile environment. As McIlroy himself stated, "We shut them up by our performance and how we played." That statement, delivered on the course, was powerful and true. It's unfortunate that his actions afterward undermined that message. Captain Luke Donald deserves immense credit for his brilliant leadership. He prepared his team to be anti-fragile and capable of withstanding the hostile environment. His use of virtual reality headsets to simulate crowd noise was an innovative first step in preparing for what they would face. Donald's success in guiding his team through this crucible has strengthened the case for retaining successful captains for both home and away campaigns. This is a direct tactical response to the increasing difficulty of winning on U.S. soil. The victory itself, achieved against the odds and in the face of such intense pressure, was a testament to the team's resilience and mental fortitude. This win is one for the history books. The 2025 Ryder Cup will be remembered for two things: an incredible underdog victory and a cautionary tale about the collision of sports, politics, and media. The celebratory chant in the Bethpage locker room was not the cause of a controversy, but rather a symptom of a much larger condition. It was the final, defiant exclamation point on a tournament where the foundational values of golf, etiquette, respect, and integrity were pushed to their absolute breaking point. The forces of extreme political polarization, a media environment that rewards conflict, and a fan culture that increasingly mistakes venom for passion converged on a golf course in New York. While McIlroy's actions were an understandable release of frustration, a cathartic moment after days of vitriol, they ultimately detracted from his team's historic achievement. He handed Trump a narrative victory on a silver platter. What do you think? Was McIlroy's chant a harmless joke or a major misstep? Did he get outplayed by Trump in the media game? Or is this all just overblown? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of what really happened at Bethpage, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest stories in sports that the mainstream media gets wrong. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.